In the lively town of Kasongo Ridge, Nalitha stood still at the gate of her own home, unable to move as bright lights flashed and loud music filled the air. Laughter echoed everywhere, people danced and food was being served like it was a big celebration. But this was not a happy moment for her. This party was for something cruel. It was her father's party, celebrating the day he kicked her out of his life. Her heart beat fast as she slowly stepped closer, hoping maybe she misunderstood. But then she heard his voice. Mandla stood in the middle of the crowd holding a drink, smiling proudly. "From today," he said loudly, "I have no daughter like her." The guests laughed, some even clapped as if it was a joke. No one defended her. No one cared. Nalitha felt something break inside her. Her chest felt heavy, her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to cry in front of them. She looked at her father one last time, the man who was supposed to protect her, but instead humiliated her in front of everyone. Without saying a word, she turned around and walked away slowly. But deep inside, pain turned into something stronger. Under her breath, she whispered with quiet strength, "You will regret this." With nothing but a small bag in her hand, Nalitha stepped out into the cold night of Kasongo Ridge. The music from the party slowly faded behind her, but the pain stayed loud inside her chest. The streets felt different now, darker, quieter, and colder than ever before. She walked slowly, not knowing where to go, her mind still stuck on her father's words and the laughter of the people who watched her humiliation. She thought about going to her relatives, but deep down she already knew the truth. Still she tried. One by one, she knocked on doors, but no one opened them for her. Some lights turned off as soon as they saw her. Some people peeked through windows and quickly looked away. It was like she didn't exist anymore. The same people who once smiled at her were now acting like strangers. That hurt even more than her father's words. Her legs started to feel weak, and her eyes burned from holding back tears. Finally, she found a small roadside shelter and sat down on the cold ground. Cars passed by but no one stopped. The night grew deeper, and the silence around her became heavy. She pulled her bag close and wrapped her arms around herself, trying to feel some warmth. Again and again, her father's voice played in her head. "I have no daughter like her." Those words cut deeper every time she remembered them. A few tears escaped her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She refused to cry like a victim. She refused to stay broken. Hours passed, and as the cold night surrounded her, something inside her began to change. The pain was still there, but it was no longer making her weak. It was making her strong. Her sadness slowly turned into anger, and her anger turned into determination. She looked up at the dark sky, her eyes now steady and strong. In that quiet moment, she made a promise to herself, a promise she would never break. In a low but firm voice, she whispered, "I will never beg them again. One day they will beg me." That night, Nalitha didn't just lose her home. She lost her fear. And in its place, something powerful was born. The next morning, the cold air slowly faded as the sun began to rise over Kasongo Ridge. Nalitha was still sitting under the roadside shelter, her body tired and her eyes heavy from a sleepless night. She hadn't eaten anything, and her strength was almost gone. People passed by, busy with their lives, but no one stopped to ask if she was okay. She felt invisible, like the world had already forgotten her. Just when she was about to lose hope, a soft voice spoke near her. "Child, are you all right?" Nalitha slowly looked up and saw a calm, kind-faced woman standing in front of her. Her name was Mama Saad. There was something different about her. She didn't look away. She didn't judge, she simply cared. Nalitha tried to speak, but her voice was weak. Mama Saad didn't ask too many questions. She gently helped Nalitha stand up and said, "Come with me." For a moment, Nalitha hesitated. After everything she had been through, trusting someone felt difficult. But something in Mama Saada's eyes felt safe, so she followed her. Mama Saad took her to a small but clean home. The smell of fresh food filled the air, and for the first time in hours, Nalitha felt a little warmth. She was given water, food, and a place to rest. As she ate, tears slowly rolled down her face, not from sadness this time but from relief. Someone finally saw her. Someone finally cared. After Nalitha rested, Mama Saad sat beside her and gently asked what had happened. Nalitha shared her story, her voice shaking as she spoke about the party, the humiliation, and the night she spent alone. Mama Saad listened quietly, without interrupting, without judging. After a moment of silence, Mama Saad smiled softly and said something that Nalitha would never forget. Sometimes rejection is protection. Maybe what you lost was never meant to stay. Now it's your time to rise. Those words hit deep. For the first time, Nalitha didn't feel like a victim. She felt like someone who still had a chance. Mama Saad then told her about her small transport business. It wasn't big, but it was growing. She said she needed someone smart, someone hardworking. She looked straight at Nalitha and said, "I see something special in you." In that moment, Nalitha felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. That morning didn't just give her food and shelter. It gave her a new beginning. Nalitha didn't waste a single day after that. The very next morning, she started working with Mama Saad. The business was small. Just a few vehicles, some drivers, and a simple office, but to Nalitha it felt like a new world. First, everything was confusing. She had to learn how bookings worked, how to deal with customers, how to manage money, and how to handle drivers who didn't always listen. But instead of feeling scared, she felt excited. During the day, she stayed close to Mama Saad, watching every move, listening to every conversation, and learning every small detail. At night, when everyone was sleeping, Nalitha stayed awake. She would sit with old records, notebooks, and receipts, trying to understand how the business worked. Sometimes her eyes would get tired, but she didn't stop. She remembered that cold night, and it pushed her to keep going. Within just a few days, something started to change. Nalitha began noticing small problems in the business: routes that were wasting fuel, drivers taking longer paths, and customers who were not being treated properly. Instead of staying quiet, she started sharing her ideas. At first, Mama Saad listened carefully, a little surprised. But when they tried Nalitha's ideas, the results were shocking. The vehicles started making more trips in less time. Customers became happier. Money started coming in faster than before. Even the drivers, who didn't take her seriously at first, began to respect her. They saw that she wasn't just another helper. She was smart, focused, and different. Mama Saad watched all of this with quiet pride. One evening, she looked at Nalitha and said, "You're not ordinary. I knew it the day I saw you." From that moment, she didn't treat Nalitha like a worker anymore. She treated her like her own daughter, trusting her with bigger responsibilities. Nalitha felt that trust, and it made her even stronger. The girl who was once standing outside her house, unwanted and humiliated, was now sitting in an office, making decisions and changing lives. She was no longer just surviving, she was growing. And deep inside, she knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. One afternoon, while checking old business listings and reports, Nalitha came across something that caught her attention: a struggling logistics company in Zabari City. The company was almost finished. Its vehicles were old, its drivers were leaving, and it had a bad name in the market. Most people had already given up on it. Some even laughed, saying, "That business is dead. No one can save it." But Nalitha didn't see failure. She saw opportunity. She looked deeper into the details: routes, expenses, customer complaints, and delivery delays. The more she studied it, the more she became sure of one thing: the business wasn't weak, it was just poorly managed. She could see ways to fix it, improve it, and turn it around. That evening, she sat with Mama Saad and shared her idea. At first, Mama Saad was quiet. It was a risky move. Investing in a failing company could lead to big loss. But when she looked into Nalitha's eyes, she saw confidence, not fear. After a moment, she smiled and said, "If you believe in it, I believe in you." That was all Nalitha needed. Within days, they made the deal. People thought they were making a mistake. Some even warned them to step back before it was too late. But Nalitha didn't listen. She packed her things and went straight to Zabari City, ready to face the challenge. The moment she stepped into the company's office, she understood why it was failing. The place was disorganized, the staff had no motivation, and everything felt broken. But instead of feeling discouraged, Nalitha got to work immediately. She changed the routes, fixed delivery schedules, replaced lazy drivers, and spoke directly to customers. She stayed day and night, solving problems one by one. There were moments when things felt difficult, but she didn't stop. She remembered where she came from, and she refused to go back to that life. Slowly, things started to change. Deliveries became faster. Customers began to return. Money started coming in again. Within just a few days, the same business people had called dead started showing signs of life. People in Zabari City began to notice. They started talking about a young woman who came out of nowhere and brought a dying company back to life. Her name spread quickly, and with it came respect. Nalitha wasn't just rebuilding a business, she was building her name. And now everyone was starting to see it. Her vision was unstoppable. Within just 2 weeks, everything changed in a way no one expected. The same company people had called finished was now one of the fastest-growing businesses in Zubari City. Trucks that once stood still were now moving day and night. Orders kept coming in, and the office that once felt empty was now full of energy and purpose. Nalitha worked non-stop, checking every detail, making sure nothing went wrong. She didn't celebrate early. She stayed focused. Big clients started noticing the sudden change. They were surprised by the speed, the honesty, and the results. One by one, they began signing contracts with her company. Some of these deals were bigger than anything the company had ever seen before. Nalitha also built strong connections with powerful people in the industry. But she stayed humble. She didn't forget where she came from. People in the city started talking about her everywhere. "Who is this girl?" they asked. "How did she do this so fast?" Her name spread like wildfire. Nalitha was no longer just a hard-working girl. She had become a rising force that people respected. But while her world was rising, another world was slowly falling. Back in Kasongo Ridge, Manla's business began to break apart. At first it was small problems, missed deals, late payments, unhappy clients. But soon those small problems turned into big losses. The same people who once stood at his party, laughing and cheering, were now nowhere to be seen. His phone stopped ringing. His office became quiet. He tried to call old contacts, but they avoided him. Some made excuses, others didn't answer at all. The respect he once had was slipping away piece by piece. His pride, the same pride that made him throw that cruel party, was now turning into fear. At night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about everything going wrong, not understanding why his life was falling apart so fast. The man who once stood confidently in front of a crowd was now sitting alone, surrounded by silence. And somewhere far away, the daughter he threw out was rising higher every single day, without him even knowing it. Days passed, and Manla's situation only got worse. Bills kept piling up, workers started leaving, and the little money he had left was disappearing fast. Every morning he woke up with stress, and every night he went to bed with fear. The man who once felt powerful now felt completely helpless. His pride was gone, replaced by desperation. He tried everything. He called old friends, business partners, even people he once ignored. But no one wanted to help him now. Some didn't pick up his calls, and others gave cold responses. It was like the whole world had turned its back on him, the same way he had once turned his back on his own daughter. One afternoon, while sitting in his quiet office, someone mentioned a name. They told him about a young business owner in Zubari City who was doing the impossible, saving companies that were about to collapse. They said she was smart, fearless, and known for turning failure into success in a very short time. People were talking about her everywhere. At first, Manla didn't pay much attention. But when he heard how many businesses she had already helped, something inside him shifted. This felt like his last chance. He had no options left. Without wasting time, he decided to go to Zubari City and meet this woman. The journey felt long and heavy. His mind was full of worry, but also a small hope that maybe, just maybe, this person could save him. When he finally reached the city, he saw how big and busy it was. Everything felt different from Kasongo Ridge. He asked around and quickly found the address of the company. People spoke highly of the owner, praising her success and sharp mind. Hearing that made him nervous, but he kept moving forward. As he stood outside the large office building, he took a deep breath. His hands felt slightly shaky. He wasn't used to asking for help like this, but he had no choice anymore. What he didn't know, what he couldn't even imagine, was that behind that office door was someone he already knew. The same daughter he once humiliated in front of everyone was now the only person who could save him. Manla slowly walked into the office, his steps heavy and uncertain. The place was large, clean, and beautifully designed. Nothing like the small, struggling spaces he was used to now. The air felt calm, but his heart was racing. His hands were slightly shaking as he looked around, trying to stay strong, even though inside he felt completely broken. A receptionist guided him inside a private office and asked him to wait. He sat down, wiping the sweat from his forehead, thinking about what he would say. This meeting meant everything. This was his last chance. Then the chair behind the desk slowly turned around. In that moment, time felt like it stopped. Mandla's eyes widened, and his heart nearly stopped beating. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Sitting in front of him, calm and confident, dressed in power and success, was Nalitha, his daughter. The same girl he had humiliated. The same girl he had thrown out like she meant nothing. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He tried to speak, but his voice got stuck. His mind went blank. Shock, regret, and fear all hit him at once. He couldn't even look her in the eyes properly. But Nalitha, she didn't look shocked. She didn't look angry either. She was calm, strong, in control. She leaned back slightly in her chair, her eyes steady on him. There was no fear in her anymore. No pain on her face, just quiet power. After a few seconds of silence, she finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but every word felt heavy. "You threw a party when I lost everything," she said slowly. Mandla lowered his head, unable to face her. Then she continued, looking straight at him. "And now, I own everything you need." Those words hit him harder than anything he had ever felt. The truth stood right in front of him. The daughter he once rejected was now far above him, and the man who once had everything was now standing there, with nothing. In that moment, Mandla realized something painful. He didn't just lose his business. He lost the one person who could have stood by him. And now he was standing in front of her. Not as a father, but as a man begging for a second chance. For a few seconds, the room stayed completely silent. Mandla stood there, unable to hold himself together anymore. The weight of everything, his losses, his mistakes, his pride, finally broke him. Slowly, his legs gave up, and he dropped to his knees right in front of Nalitha. The same man who once stood proudly in front of a crowd, laughing as he disowned his own daughter, was now on the floor begging. "Nalitha, please," he said, his voice shaking, almost breaking. "I need your help. You're my only hope now." His eyes were filled with regret, but also fear. He had nothing left to lose. Nalitha looked at him quietly. She didn't rush to speak. She didn't show anger or satisfaction. She just watched him, taking in the moment. The same man who once made her feel worthless was now asking her to save him. After a moment, she stood up slowly and walked closer to him. Her steps were calm, her face serious. She stopped a few feet away and spoke in a steady voice. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. Mandla closed his eyes, unable to escape the memory. "The music, the laughter. The way people looked at me while you stood there and said you had no daughter," she continued. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word carried deep pain. Mandla lowered his head even more, shame written all over his face. Nalitha took a deep breath. For a second, it felt like the past and present were standing together in that room. But she didn't let her emotions take control. "I could treat you the same way," she said calmly. "I could laugh, I could walk away just like you did." Mandla didn't say anything. He knew she had every right to do that. But then Nalitha said something that changed everything. "But I won't." Mandla slowly looked up, surprised. "I won't treat you the way you treated me," she continued. "Because I'm not like you." Her voice was strong now, full of self-respect. There was a short silence before she added, "But one thing is clear, you will never control me again." Those words were firm. There was no space for argument. She then turned back toward her desk and said, "I will help your business, but it will be on my terms. Clear terms. No disrespect, no control, no interference." Mandla nodded quickly, tears in his eyes. At that moment, he didn't care about pride anymore. He just wanted a chance. And just like that, the power had completely shifted. The daughter he once rejected was now the one deciding his future. Nalitha kept her word, but she did everything on her own terms. She helped rebuild her father's business step by step, fixing his mistakes, organizing his work, and bringing his lost clients back. But this time things were different. Mandla was no longer the one in control. He followed her instructions, stayed quiet, and slowly began to understand what respect really meant. The same man who once looked down on her now listened to her every word. But Nalitha didn't stop there. She didn't limit herself to just one business. She kept growing, moving from one city to another, building new companies, making bigger deals, and creating a name that people couldn't ignore. In a short time, she became known as one of the strongest and smartest businesswomen in the region. People admired her not just for her success but for her story, how she rose from nothing after being humiliated in the worst way. Back in Kasongo Ridge, her story spread everywhere. People who once laughed at her now spoke her name with respect, and one sentence stayed in everyone's mind. The day he celebrated losing his daughter was the day he lost everything. As for Nalitha, she never looked back at the pain that once tried to break her. She didn't live in the past anymore. She had turned that pain into power, that rejection into success, because in the end she didn't just prove them wrong, she became unstoppable.